So the question and the challenge is how to overcome the challenges imposed by the future of mobility. And let's be honest, in the real world, outside of this room, electric mobility has to solve several issues, so we consider better off than a solution like diesel. In real world, people usually make decisions based on short-term benefits, and very, very short-term benefits. If you ask a company, for example, a project return in 7 years, they will probably say yes. 7 years is a good investment return base for a project. If you ask an individual to have their return, and when I say return, it's not only financial return, it's the time they use, it's all the constraints, it's all the benefits and the challenges they face. 7 years is too much. People want things faster, and the benefits should be faster. And we also have to think that climate change and the fight of climate change, it's part of the everyday person, like soccer practice, like getting kids to school, like guaranteeing that the salary reach the end of the month. So it's one more issue that we have to deal. So the question here, and I think, and I heard the last panel, and it was really interesting because it was all about making decisions and shifting. But we need to put consumers on the center of the discussion. We need to guarantee that climate change is like a customer pain. It's something that needs to be solved by the companies with the customers, or consumers, or the people in the center of the problem. And sometimes we don't see that happening. In terms of technology, I think that what we have it does not solve the problem, and we need to move faster. And I know that OEMs and companies are doing their best to move faster in terms of technology, but it's not fast enough. Let me give you a real example from a life story that I encountered. So I live in Benfica area, and my butcher, which is Pedro. Pedro is a very nice guy. He's been a butcher for 30 years. But not only sells meats to everyday consumers like me, and very good meat, so incredible, but also supplies several schools in the Lisbon area. So he needs a refrigerator van with 3 tons that can supply, in this district, in this metropolitan area, to several schools. And it doesn't have an electrical option. And he was complaining about that. So, how to address Pedro's problem? And Pedro is a guy like many others that have the willing. They want to have a solution. They don't have a solution, or if they have a solution, it's like 100K solution, which is not it's not economically feasible for a guy that needs to make his money. So this is something that technology will need to address. And of course, I believe that if we're going for the future, we will reach there. But is it doable? Is it fast enough? Will we have things that are not just supercars for the very rich ones that they don't need electric vehicles anyway? Or, for example, city cars that, electric city cars, and I won't mention any brand, but, brands that electric car costs more than double than the cousin in gasoline. So, should we ask this? For a customer, for a client, for a person that, if you take the Portuguese example, in average makes 1,000 euros per month. This is the real case and the real life that we need to solve. Another. Let me pass this. Yes. So another topic that another challenge that I think that will be solved, and although the challenge I present here, they might seem quite gloomy, and but I think it's a mean for you to be provoked also and to start this discussion, is what is related to interoperability, roaming, and open standards. So I have an electric car, I want to go to France. And it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a customer pain for me to go to France with my electric car, because I need to, log in, log out from these different systems. I need to plan my visit. And it's not like my cell phone. And I should be using electric cars like my cell phone. I go to France, I use the cell phone. I go to, whatever country, I can use my cell phone. And I should be able to do that. So, in other things, interoperability and roaming should be similar to what we have. And I will say, technology will solve that. But we need to guarantee that, communication platforms communicate, that we have the standards, the open standards, and the roaming that allows us to do that, to do this. Because we have all the infrastructure. We have the recharging vehicle that has its own software, but then you have the infrastructure of recharge, we have the charger itself, the standards, any regulations, the regulatory issues between different countries that may impose different facilities that are just not feasible. Regarding the infrastructure, and this is like the critical point here, it's not enough, and it doesn't move fast enough. Again, we have, according to the European Alternative Fuels Observatory, we have now 225 charging points in the European Union. 225,000, yes. We'll be reaching 2030 with 3 million charging points. That gives more or less one charging point per, or charging station per square kilometer in the European Union. It's not enough. And it's not enough because we need this to be open and more available to anybody, so it doesn't become a barrier for the adoption of the electric vehicle, whatever it is. I'm talking about cars, but also two-wheel electric vehicle. It doesn't need. We cannot bear to have a barrier on the infrastructure, and our cities, for which the infrastructure was built in some cases 100 years ago, are not ready for this. And we need to prepare utilities that usually think in decades. It's not like the telecom industry. The industry might change in 2 years, 3 years. In an electrical utility, they think in decades. What's going to be the investment for the next decade? What do I have to do in the transmission line, in the distribution line? So this is one of the problems. And according to Euroelectric, we're going to need about 50 billion euros just to infrastructure the electric grid for the electric mobility. And this is going to be a real critical issue. We have cities that have networks that are really, really old. Some of the networks are completely blind, so no one really knows what's happening in the network. We know until the substation, but then in the distribution, so in the transmission part of the network, everything is visible. Below that, so in the distribution, is completely blind, so no one knows who's charging, who's not charging. And technology has a real place on this as well. And then again, we have to think about customers. For Amazon, they don't care if you're doing valet charging, direct charging, whatever. My package needs to be there on time. For Pedro, he doesn't care anything about who's charging, whatever, what's the infrastructure. He doesn't care. He has a meat to be delivered. He needs to be on time for the customer. So make it sure that we have an infrastructure that can respond fast enough. Let me give you another example, a real example on how infrastructure doesn't evolve the way we want or as fast enough. we have now in Portugal about 17 gigawatt of solar energy to be installed. And where's the bottleneck? In the infrastructure. The bottleneck is in the infrastructure. So you have project developers ready, you have projects to be in place, all the process is done, the infrastructure is lagging behind. And this will happen also in mobility. And that's a critical issue. One other aspect, and this will come on terms of investment, it's obviously that we need to invest in the infrastructure, we need to invest in technology, we need to invest in making sure that for the 7 years that we have, that Pedro mentioned, we will be able to reach the goals and even exceed the goals. But this will come in our pockets. So when I say hide your money, it's because this will be reflected in the tariffs. This will be reflected in our everyday life. And in a time such we have now, and we hope that it passes soon enough, investing in networks will become more costly in terms of tariffs and will be reflected in your pockets at the end of the day. But this is absolutely needed. If you have a more decarbonized world, you're going to obviously have more variations in terms of the energy demand that you might have and the energy offer that you might have. So you need to have an infrastructure that can respond to that in a better way. And this is my last slide. Reality is a pain. I love to see and I really love to see the sketches and the pictures on the futuristic pictures, but we need to face reality. And don't take me wrong, I'm absolutely enthusiastic on electric mobility, on new fuels, on renewables. This is the way. This is the way. In particular, when you have a time of regional concerns, on security of supply in different countries, when you have the ability and the drive to guarantee that you have own resources being used, when you have the drive also for decarbonization. But this needs to be demanded, needs to be offered in a way that it makes sense financially, but also in a sustainable way. You can do whatever you want with Excel spreadsheet. You can think about, guaranteeing that the project will happen, that people will change the way they drive, and that they will make the better decisions. But they will make decisions that make sense for them, and it's up to us to offer all the possibilities that make sense for them. In my life, in my commercial approach in the company, we work a lot with decarbonization projects, and one thing that strikes me is sometimes I see decarbonization plans in countries. They just they don't stick to reality. Just wishful thinking that people will adopt different changes in the culture. And we are not so much different from here in 2022 from what we will be in terms of culture in 2030 or 2040. We need to have the ability and the possibility to make sure that these challenges are met, these challenges are overcome, and that we can offer a real possibility for the people. So the way to address the mobility challenges is to make them actionable, effective, financially reasonable, and bankable. Making sure that it's bankable. It's a business. This is a business. We don't have tree huggers here, or maybe we have here in this room because we are all committed for this. But outside, there's no tree huggers. There's people with difficult lives. So, let's make this effective in a way that makes sense for people. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a few minutes now for questions from the audience. We have first one here. I'm going to hand out the microphone. Put your hand up and we'll just move around and direct it to, we're closing out the first session on mobility, so it can be directed to anyone in particular. So.
Hello. This is on? Yeah. Hello, my name is Vasconcelos, and this is a tricky question, so yeah, but I will make it anyways. I'm very interested in all panels in your intakes on electric transportation with lithium batteries, and why not use sodium batteries that is more cheap and more environmental friendly, and there are actually studies that consider the lifetime of batteries not worth it in comparison to their emissions, so they will end up in some desert in some non-developing countries, like all of our tech equipments nowadays, so we will export our emissions in terms of batteries and in terms of making the batteries. So what is your intake in that matter? I know it's a tricky question, but yeah, I really want to know what
so let's you go first then if you've got a comment.
Well, mining is a problem. The knife and fork you eat with, mining that is a problem. That's nothing to do with lithium or cobalt or that. That's how we let things be done. That's a completely different question. And nowadays, those the mining of lithium, it's so scrutinized that it's really a lot better than the one for the metals that we use for other things. Sodium, yes, is a good solution. It's not so efficient. Professor Maria Helena Braga in Porto is working on that, and she said, yeah, it's the future. The problem is, we're taking the risk of letting do with lithium the same we did with oil, which is until some guy earns the last million with it, we're going to be betting on that. And yes, it can be a problem, but the hope is that there's already half solid batteries coming along, then the solid ones. There's already even brands of manufacturer of cars saying that, by the way, no, they're not more expensive. We have a low section deficit. The electric car starts on the medium-high brands, but the same car in the same slope, the electric is not more expensive anymore. And then we can talk about a few more things there. But sorry. Electric is the way. There's no. If we compare it to oil in any of the stages, it's a lot more sustainable. We must demand that things are done better, and that we don't send the bad part. We don't want the bad parts on our yard, so we send it to the third world. No, we don't. We can't let that happen, or we must have that stopped. But anyway, in any of the stages of energy that you look at, the combustion, the oil, always is a lot worse. So let's focus on going the right way, better, with better procedures and better ways of doing things.
Do you have something to add here?
Yeah, yes. Just a quick note on the batteries and on the mining component here. What makes me so this is a business that will happen, okay? And it's a matter of choice. Okay, there's no alternative right now, so it's better to have this choice in terms of the batteries till we find something else. Okay, and the life of a battery after being in a car is still, it can continue to be used, for example, in a household for many years. So this is the first point. The second point that I want to add, and because we have some ideas of mining, lithium mining projects in Portugal, is that what makes me angry is that we don't have the value chain of the cycle. So I don't care, or it's not interesting for me as Portuguese to have the mining, and then the mining of this lithium component that needs to be transformed goes to China, or goes to another country. What I want to have is the mining in Portugal. It's okay, it can be done, in sustainable ways with, labor. Wait, let me just finish. But then have the refinery in Portugal and have the gigafactory in Portugal. And then I have the value chain, because I can add value to this. And this is what it brings, GDP. This is what increases GDP and the economy. It's not like having just a pure mine that is going to be then exported to be added value somewhere else. So this is my standpoint on lithium. In terms of environment, I'm not the environmentalist guy that, I'm a businessman. So for me, if it makes sense, if the regulations are secured and the APA is involved, I'm happy with that.
What he said is the most sustainable way anyway. He didn't put that on the menu, but the mobility emissions of sending the lithium to China to refine it, then to send it somewhere else to make the batteries, then to bring it back to Europe for the car manufacturers, it's huge. So we should always have circular economy, preferably, but local, close by. We take the lithium out here, we have the refinery right next to it, then the battery factory there. Also, which means that the best decisions sustainably nowadays are already the financially better ones too.
Thank you. We have another question up the back here. So.
Yeah, thank you very much for the interesting presentation. I very much enjoyed, especially the last one. I'm a power systems engineer from Amsterdam and well aware of the difficulties regarding upgrading the infrastructure of the power grid. Like for instance in Amsterdam, we need to upgrade the capacity of the power grid ×5 before 2040 in order to accommodate for all the charging poles, the heat pumps, and all the electrification that has to happen. And I was wondering, especially with regards to the current energy crisis, how do you think it will impact the future development of the electrification and infrastructure development? Will it make it go faster because the pressure is more on to become sustainable and electrify, or will it go slower because infrastructure developments are becoming more expensive and costly and difficult to do?
Yeah.
I can add something here. Well, quick answer. I think it will go faster, but we will pay for it. Okay. So it's going to be reflected in the tariffs. There's no other way to do it. Maybe part will come from carbon tax, and will support part of the development. But we need to move faster. The thing here is, as I mentioned, you have utilities, and look, I come from a utility in my past, and this is not a complaint. It's like the mindset of the sector, and the mindset of the sector is changing in decades. When you think about, generation, you think in, decades. When you think about transmission, it's been there for 100 years, and it will be there for 100 years. And even distribution is, it's pretty much the same. So we need to move faster and invest more, but this will be paid by all of us, and it needs to be paid by all of us. There's no, there's no other way to support the development of the system. I'm sure that in Amsterdam, it's being reflected in the tariffs, even mobility tariffs, or the rest of the consumers, and it will be done, by everyone.
If we could keep going this way, which is like 17 gigawatts of projects ready to be feeding the grid, general rates, and then high voltage cables to send it, transport it to the other side of the world or the country, this is not the way. Local. This should be all done local. We're doing solar panel plantations with huge environmental impact instead of putting people producing in their roofs. Well, we're subsidizing old buildings to become better energetically, and we're not forcing people who are building new buildings to do them the right way then. This is stupid. We should, if things go on like this, yes, we'll be paying a lot for this. We should be telling people to make co-generation communities, municipalities. There's a municipality in France that people don't pay taxes anymore because they generate their own electricity. Now they're selling, they contribute with something. The municipality is selling to the municipalities around them, so taxes went lower because it's a profitable business for the municipality. Factories should be forced to produce their own. The grid must become a backup, not the base of everything. And that is more profitable for everybody. Oh, yeah.
No.
More questions? Okay, we have a question here. I'll take this one. Excuse me. Yes.
Should we move over there?
Yeah, sure. It's fine. Come up. Yeah, come up.
Just a final question. Which of the following do you think it will be more part of the future? Doing car sharing?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Which of the following do you think it will be more feasible in the future? Betting in carpooling and car sharing with service software as a service provider and working as an intermodality basis that will definitely increase the number of passengers per vehicle, or using, for instance, 5G networks to develop train trucks and increase the efficiency on transport of merchandise.
Well, let me see my crystal ball here. I don't know what is more bankable and financially sustainable for everyday Joe. You know, I think that's the answer. But I think Pedro probably has a more educated answer on this. For me, it's all about money.
Yeah, I can try. I can try go there. I would say all of them in different contexts. So there is no such thing as a silver bullet saying, okay, let's bet on sharing. And sharing works everywhere. It doesn't work like that. In some places, sharing works. In some places, public transportation is better. In some places, walkability is better. So the way we see it is we need to go from the ground up. That means we need to find a solution from the bottom up, not from the top down. Okay, the top down, usually governments, municipalities, they try to have an approach regarding resources to be more efficient. I understand that, but in the end, the impact it's way bigger if we look for management resources. We need to, but at the same time, we need to find a solution from the bottom up, and that means looking. I just mentioned about the metropolitan area. We can't just think about Lisbon. We need to zoom out. But then, well, no, it's my research. No. We need to zoom out. It's the area, the geographical area, how people move. You know, we live, let's say, in Oeiras. We work in Lisbon, and we go shopping to Cascais. This is the true thing, you know, or a different combination of those. But it happens. One quick thing: if we want to lower. And this is my perspective. If we want to lower prices, if we want to lower, let's say, what we call the green premium, so the difference between using what already exists comparing with the more sustainable choices. Usually the green is more expensive, okay? What we are doing now is trying to close the gap of that green premium. To do that, I don't see another option than to bet in technology and help technology to drive the cost down on scale and on production, and preferably, like Antonio was saying, locally, doing this locally, okay? This is the way I really see it.
Okay, I think we take one more question if there's any more. More questions? Okay, we take one here, and then we're going to take a very short break and move into the next section.
Just to remember that when we say that what is more expensive or what is cheaper, probably we should aggregate the real costs.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, the impact in the planet and the real costs. When we have the
But there's no money on that.
the global warming, and when we have hurricanes, and when
It's
we
difficult.
have the impact,
You're absolutely right.
isn't it?
You're absolutely right.
It's the only way to have a fair comparison between what is.
Nobody puts that on the cocktail.
It's true. Yeah.
You have the social costs, you have the environmental costs, and usually they're not accounted. They're not accounted. But you know, it's. Look, let me put it this way. You know, we need, and I'm working on that. And I'm working on that with the, for example, with Saya on developing those tools, on making sure that we have an idea of the value of, you know, a social value of carbon. You know, but this needs to be justifiable for the everyday Joe, okay? This needs. I cannot impose a social price on carbon without the Pedro, my butcher, understands. You know what's in for me. You know what's inside of this. You know because as I mentioned in the beginning, decisions for everyday people, they need to have they usually need to have a payback time that is very, very short. You know, if you're thinking about, you know, 2 generations from here, or 1 generation from here, or even within 7 years, it's too far for them. It's too far. You know, you need to pay the taxes, and you need to go, and you need to. So, you know, it needs to be very well explained. And I think when I say no, it's difficult. It's because we can reach a number, but then, you know, we need to make sure that this number it makes sense in the everyday life.
The solution for Pedro is conversion, which is more sustainable and lower price.
I'm sure.
Lower price. And sorry, but nowadays there are a lot of sustainable solutions that they are way cheaper than the way we usually do things. For instance, reutilizing. For instance, local. But we just have to get our minds on the right side. But yeah, some things are still more expensive. But then if we put them, these costs, they're not. They're a lot cheaper.
Yep.
Or we can just say, the next.
I don't care. I don't care.
In the meantime, I'll do it.
Okay.
Just one quick thing, just to put a real number on what you're saying. If I go to the market and I want to have a permit to put a ton of CO2, because my business needs to, I don't know, to scale, and I need to emit more. Right now, when I say right now, last week, it was around $70 the ton of CO2 to emit. If that ton stays in the atmosphere, it costs for Portugal around 200 euros on the PIB. That's the impact of the social cost. So let's put it this way. What's happening right now is that I can spend $70 to have a permit to put a ton up there, that if it stays there, it costs the local economy, and it varies around the world. It's not the same number. On the north of Europe, it's lower, but for instance, for India, Pakistan, that region, it goes as high as 500 euros per ton. That's the real social cost. This is why most of the work that we do, it focuses on saving emissions and get the value from that, from avoiding the emission itself, and then trying to enable local markets and local
Getting the
goods.
price out of the equation.
Getting the price out of the equation.
You cannot do it. Okay, how do you compare?
I'm going to ask us to, because we're going to come back to more question and answer after the second session now, which is actually on energy. So these questions will come back up again. So I'd like to thank you all for participating in the session so far, all our speakers and panelists. Thank you very much.